It is a Monday. The vibes are high, live right here on the early line on SportsGrid. It is the All-Star break now in the association. Much to the chagrin of Donnie Rightside, the NBA does not play again until Thursday night. After All-Star weekend in Indianapolis, Monday off, Tuesday off, Wednesday off. When they return, less than 30 games left in the regular season for every team around the association. Oftentimes, Donnie, we think of all-star breaks in sports as the halfway point, the reset of a regular season. We are going to reset and look at the markets overall in the association, but it is certainly not the halfway point. When these teams return, it's the home stretch. It's that postseason push with just about 27 to 29 games remaining for every team around the NBA, all 30 clubs.
Yeah, and you know what the interesting part about it is now, Ben, as handicappers, is this now the time that we should be firing away? Because if you have a perceived notion that a team is going to go on a run, and you probably have the best indicator being, all right, the All-Star game is done. The sprint to the playoffs begins now. Everything that we did over the past couple months here was getting ready for this spot here, getting rested, and coming out of that gate hot from the All-Star break. So we're going to take a look at some of these overall odds here to win the NBA championship. But I feel if you have a strong inclination that a team is going to make a run here, you better bet it now, because if you're waiting and say, okay, we're close to the playoffs, this team has won 7 of 8 games, you could have had a 14-1 price. That's now a 12-1 price. So I think now is some of those times we have to start to make those decisions on who you actually think is going to win the NBA championship if you haven't bet it yet.
Absolutely so. I think this is the time to reset. You can look at make playoff prices as well around the association conference championship odds. And, of course, where we begin, the odds to win the Larry O'Brien Trophy this year, that NBA title. The Boston Celtics are by far the best team in the NBA here at the All-Star break. 55 games for the C's, a 43-12 record. The only team to reach the 40-win benchmark so far this season, and they have 43 victories, plus 260 the price for Boston. Not all that far behind, but still nearly a $2 gap. The reigning NBA champs, the Denver Nuggets, at plus 440. The Clippers have made their move up the board and in the Western Conference standings, plus 550 for LA. A tumultuous time for Milwaukee, 3-7 in the 10 games under Doc Rivers, 6-1 for the Bucks. But Donnie, you even see it there. The Big Four slightly different than the Big Four entering the NBA season. That was the Suns swapped out now for the Clippers, but Phoenix at a 14-1 price, $8 behind Milwaukee. There is still that Big Four, the 4 teams around the NBA, a 6-1 price or better.
Yeah, exactly. You take a look at that Western Conference here and the top shelf teams, right? The Timberwolves and the Thunder record-wise here within a game and a half of each other. Then you have another 2 teams in the Clippers and the Nuggets within 3 total games of first place Minnesota altogether. So we're looking at an unbelievable finish in the West. The thing that'll get interesting here in the East is, when are we buying in on, right? Are you going to buy in the Boston Celtics right now? We know we're the best team in the East. Is there any value whatsoever? Or are you waiting for maybe the Celtics to slip up a little bit here post-All-Star break to get a slightly better number? But the question is going to come back to be. The Celtics probably won't do that, and they'll be the consistent favorites all the way through. But you're taking a look at the Cavaliers now jumping over the Bucks. And as I said, making that decision now coming out of the All-Star break, if you think the Milwaukee Bucks are going to get it together, you got a great price right now. You really do. If you say, you know what, they're going to be a quality team, they'll end up with the 2 seed, and yes, they're going to have to battle the Celtics to get to the NBA Finals, but I think they can win in a 7-game series. Or are you under the objective, you know what? I'm looking for the teams behind the Milwaukee Bucks because they showed me what they are. And I don't think just because you come out of the All-Star break, Doc's going to draw up some unbelievable plays and away you go. Because we have to remember, variance happens in the NBA, and sometimes it's just through injuries here. Damian Lillard is a veteran guy. If he breaks down, oh well. Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's very durable, if he breaks down, that could hurt as well. Now, you don't want to factor that technically into your handicapping on a day-to-day basis, but the one team you're looking at, which you could be extremely, Ben, boom or bust feels like, of anybody, it's the Milwaukee Bucks. They could easily catch fire out of the break, or it could be more of the same. Next 10 games, 3-7. What happened to the Bucks? Is Doc the right guy?
Yeah, the Bucks right now, despite the bad vibes around the organization in a tumultuous season to this point, still the 3rd best record in the Eastern Conference, 14 games above 500, 35-21, but a $2 gap between Milwaukee and Boston for the best price to win the Eastern Conference crown. The Celtics plus 120, Boston getting closer and closer by the day, by the week in the Eastern Conference to being an even money, maybe even odds on minus money favorite to win the East. There's a 6-game cushion right now for Boston over the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have the second best record in the Eastern Conference. 6-game cushion with about 27, 28 games remaining in this NBA regular season. That is a lot of ground for anybody to make up out east. We'll look at the odds to be the number 1 seed in the Western Conference in just a moment, because those are available. No such odds in the Eastern Conference because Boston already has such a large advantage. But that's the story in the East. We'll get to the story in the West here in just a second. The Eastern Conference, Donnie, with Milwaukee on a slide, the Sixers in limbo without Joel Embiid. It's been the two teams on the rise who had wonderful months of January into this calendar year of 2024. The Cavs, who now have the second best record in the Eastern Conference, and the New York Knicks, struggling into the All-Star break, but a huge month of January. Those two prices plus 750 right now for the Cavs to win the East. The Knicks, third best price to win the Eastern Conference at plus 650, only behind the Celtics and the Bucks.
Yeah, no, they're good prices that you're going to have value on them right now because, again, we used to be known, or what we thought coming into the season, I should say, is it's going to be just 1-2 battle here all the way through in the Eastern Conference. That's the Boston Celtics and the Bucks. But now you're starting to see the Bucks as, maybe more question marks than actually answers right now, and who can come through and sort of be that tag team opponent to say, you know what, we'll knock them out before we even get to the Boston Celtics and have a chance to play for maybe the Eastern Conference Finals. The interesting thing about New York is, didn't we love the grit, grime, and street cred that they were getting here with multiple starters down in their lineup and still continue to win? Sort of caught up with them here. But we want to see post-All-Star break, Julius Randle coming back to the equation, OG Anunoby being healthy, and see what the Knicks actually are capable of doing. Like what I saw, but rightfully so, they were going to run out of gas. The Cleveland Cavaliers coming into the season, we expected as maybe it's that team to finally take that next step. They're not necessarily winning the Eastern Conference, but taking them seriously, Ben, coming into the playoffs. Not going like, hey, look, they're talented enough to win a round, but round number 2, they'll eventually get bounced out. Maybe they can win a round or 2 here coming into the playoffs. But that one team that we take a look at now, which, again, should be off the radar and rightfully so, 14-1 price here at the FanDuel Sportsbook. It's the Philadelphia 76ers. And you said, well, how could you do that or trust Joel Embiid? Well, the unknown sometimes, Ben, is a lot more fun to bet and pretend because you can get value on that. Because what if the unknown is Joel Embiid takes time off and it's a blessing in disguise. He comes back, he's in shape, ready to go, a little bit rusty in round number 1, he gets his legs, and by round number 2, doesn't have all that wear and tear on him here that he has throughout the season, typically in the past few years where he does wear down in the playoffs. If you could tell me right now, which again, I know you can't, but if you're just playing office, the price point to win the East, if you get a healthy MVP caliber Joel Embiid, now team with Buddy Hield, Tyrese Maxey, and the rest of the fellows on the Sixers healthy in the playoffs, that's a fun, intriguing one. But if you're taking a look at Cleveland and also New York, I actually trust Cleveland a little bit more than New York. I do, Ben.
And that's the story in the East. I think it is the Sixers, and I think it's the Heat. Because right now, even with where the Bucks might be at their peak and in their best form, it runs through Boston. So is there value on the 76ers at 14-1 or for the Heat at 16-1, knowing Miami has reached the Eastern Conference Finals 3 of the previous 4 seasons and have never looked like a world beater for the most part in the regular season. Last year, the 8th seed in the Eastern Conference playoffs. Because if you expect to fall off behind Boston, where exactly is that value? Cleveland, by the way, after a loss to Toronto on New Year's Day, was 19-15. From that point, the Cavaliers have won 18 of their last 20. New York lost 4 straight into the All-Star break, 5 of their last 6, but they were great in the month of January. Donnie, a story we have followed all year long that I think will only ramp up in terms of the focus and maybe the intensity of the debate and conversation now here in the home stretch following the All-Star break is how are those up-and-comers in the Western Conference going to truly be viewed as title contenders? The Minnesota Timberwolves, who have the best record in the West, second best in the NBA overall, and the Oklahoma City Thunder. When you look at Minnesota right now, 39-16, a game and a half clear of Oklahoma City, 2 games in front of the Clippers, a full 3-game advantage in front of the Denver Nuggets. And we have those odds to be the number 1 seed in the Western Conference, where Minnesota is the favorite, plus 135, but only 65 cents in front of the Clips at a 2-1 number.
Yeah, and also we're waiting to see what the Clippers' choice is going to be down the stretch. Do they want to get the number one overall seed? Of course, Ben. Every team would love to have that. But what's more important
Right.
to the Clippers? Really grinding on that in the final 2 weeks of the season, where maybe you have to pick up a game and a half over a team in front of you and wearing down some of your veteran superstar players that have been known to get wore down in the playoffs? Or do you back off and say, you know what? We're fine with the top 4 seed here. We're all good. We're going to be healthy. We're going to put our best foot forward once we get to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Now, if we're just trying to take a look at the Timberwolves versus OKC directly, I've stated it time and time again. Defense does win championships and it helps propel you. The one thing I do know, that defensive footprint here for the Timberwolves is very, very good. And we're still waiting to see what type of team OKC could be. And I know that it's not fair where they're 37-17 on the season. You should know what they are. But now you start to get to the moments that really matter, and every game means something for the standings moving forward. The one thing I will say, if you look at the top 4 seeds currently as it's listed right now in the standings for the Western Conference, look at the home records here. Minnesota 19-5. OKC 21-6, the Clippers 20-6, the Denver Nuggets 21-5. Home court advantage means something here. And if you can get a team like OKC or Minnesota that doesn't have that championship pedigree just yet, you know how you get confidence, Ben? Continuing to be on your home court. And it always sounds nice. You get that number 1 seed. You know what we always say? If you don't lose a game at home, you will win an NBA championship, which sounds great, much harder to do, as we know. But that gives some of these teams that haven't done it before a lot more confidence.
Of those 4 teams in the hunt for that number 1 seed right now, we shared all 3 teams: Denver, LA, OKC, Minnesota, in reverse order, separated by 3 games. There's a 3-game drop-off to the Suns and the Pelicans, who sit in 5 and 6, respectively, in the Western Conference standings. Phoenix, the hardest schedule in the home stretch of this NBA season. The Clippers, the 7th most difficult schedule around the NBA. The 3 other teams battling out for that number 1 overall seed, as the odds makers have it: OKC, Minnesota, and Denver. 3 of the easiest 11 schedules left in the NBA. Oklahoma City, 3rd easiest in the Western Conference. Only the Grizzlies and the Warriors have easier schedules. I think we'll focus on Golden State and LA, that being the Lakers, a little bit later on in this week, as we have the time to reset. And their prices not to win the Western Conference, but to even see the Western Conference playoffs. Quick look at the odds boards in terms of the NBA awards. Of course, a big move in the MVP market with Joel Embiid now missing over 20 games this season, disqualified from that 65-game minimum. Nikola Jokic, an odds-on favorite at -140. Victor Wembanyama, a hefty odds-on favorite now at -600 to win the NBA Rookie of the Year. And you see a lot of minus money, except for Mark Daigneault, who is the head coach of the Oklahoma City Thunder, to win the NBA's Coach of the Year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting how many votes are going to come over the top here and change our opinions over the next couple weeks on these awards. Sometimes they look like they're sewed up already, and then you get that late 2-week stretch here. Is it just Jokic is the win here, the MVP? We'll find out, but I'm sort of rooting for SGA here on the side here, Ben.
Yeah. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, a big performance last night in the NBA All-Star game. It will factor into those conference standings around the West as well.